Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
You must forgive me if I start becoming successful. No, forgetful. As a proof in point, already mixing words up. Now I've hit 64.
Successful never.
Never successful. Now I can't even remember words. Now I've hit 64. Now I'm the age of that Beatles song. So there we go. What an age to
Happy
hit.
birthday, Charles. Happy birthday.
Well, thank you so much. A kind thought indeed. And we move on swiftly from the rings gathering on the tree of life. And welcome, Graham, to the latest edition of Two Big Egos in a Small Car. My voice, Charles Hutchinson. I am a podcaster, a journalist, and more besides. Graham, who are you?
I refuse to be called a podcaster. That sounds like something slightly criminal. I was caught podcasting. Well, I've worked for the Harrogate Theatre for a long time. Had every job title. Been director of the Fringe for Harrogate International Festival, charm gigs, charm magazines, music talk events, multimedia events. Just non-stop, really.
Absolutely, which is how we like this to be as well. So, Graham, this week you've been to Project House in Leeds. Project House, just to remind listeners, is the addition anyway to Leeds Brudenell
Opened in
Social
July
Club.
2023.
Yeah, so not so much new, but comparatively new by comparison anyway with the Brudenell Social Club. And you went there, Graham, to see the modern jazz star Kamasi Washington, the American jazz star Kamasi Washington. And when was that, Graham?
That was Friday night
Friday
in
night.
Leeds.
And just set the scene of Project House. I mean, Leeds Brudenell Social Club is one of everyone's favourite Leeds venues. What about Project House? What is it?
I think you're ignoring the main thing, Charles, which is I went to a jazz gig. I mean, there's not many people we know just sort of casually say like, "Well, yeah, I'm off to a jazz gig." It's still a bit of a niche thing, jazz, after all
Yes,
these years.
I would accept that point. I think there's a good reason for why it's still niche.
Okay. Anyway, Project House. I mean, Kamasi Washington, unlike the new wave of British young jazz acts
Mm,
like the Comets Coming, although they've split up,
yeah.
Shabaka Hutchins and Hutchings behind that. Not Hutchinson, that'd be good.
Yes.
Hutchings
Mm.
behind that, and as a collective, who won the Mercury
Mercury,
Prize.
yeah.
Various other brilliant British acts. Well, Kamasi, who's fantastic, and his band, who are equally brilliant musicians, they're still linked to the 1960s and the classical
Mm,
jazz age of John Coltrane,
yeah.
Miles Davis, Sun Ra, Pharoah Sanders, Alice Coltrane, etc., etc.
Mm,
So they're a bit old fashioned in some ways, and so is Project House. Because when I was standing there in this venue, which is less than 2 years old, which is owned by the Brudenell Social Club, mainly because the high price of booking acts these days and the high cost of running small venues mean that even though the Bruno Social Club is hugely successful the whole time, to make sure it wasn't losing acts who now need to play bigger venues,
yeah.
they set up Project House, which has got a capacity of 1,000 standing up. So when you're in there,
Mm,
it made me think about when we used to go to gigs a lot in the 80s and 90s. It felt just like that. And then I
yes.
remembered why it felt like that. And that's because gigs we went to in the 80s and 90s were not that civilized
Nope.
and weren't upmarket. You
Nope.
basically, for your money, you got the band on stage and a bar. Gig venues are these days. And Project House is just like that. It's got loos, a bar, and a building, and the live acts, and that's your lot, which was sort of great.
Yes, and so you, I was being flippant about jazz, of course, not intentionally so, because actually it still remains cutting edge, as we've established. Kamasi's leans into the tradition, but it's still seen irrefutably as cutting edge music, as music that's deliberately challenging, and therefore can be thrilling because of its unpredictability in that challenge, and because the skill that goes with that, jazz musicianship skill um, is arguably beyond the skill of many a pop player, and that's not why someone becomes a jazz musician. It seems to me there's much more to it than that. But I think it's fair to say on a level of skill and thrill and unpredictability, that is what people are drawn to with jazz.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why both Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon in the 1970s
Mm,
eventually ended up having jazz musicians in their bands. It's because they're brilliant musicians in general.
Yes, Hajira have just played here, by the way, Graham.
Like, oh, that's good.
Yeah, they've just
Excellent.
we've got a review going up on the Charles Hutch Press from their latest gig. So tell me about Kamasi. This is, as you say, playing in what is could only be described as nothing derogatory in saying this, but very much a bog standard kind of British venue. No frills attached,
It has got a very nice cafe bar attached to it next door,
but
where
it's
you
next
get
door.
very nice food indeed. So it has got
Yeah,
civilized aspects, but the venue itself just does the job it's supposed to do, which
sure.
is it's enough for me anyway. But
So
yeah, when it
so
comes to
so
you know,
so how then does a musician work with that? If, working with a fairly basic venue.
I'm sure the sound was great. So
Yeah.
and it's got its own in-house PA, and it's got being linked to the Brunel, it's a abilities with music and live sound are great. So there's no problems whatsoever.
Mm,
But
mm.
I actually only own 40 jazz albums, which is probably 39 more than most people. But
Including me,
means that
Graham.
I know a lot of I know quite a lot about jazz, but I'm definitely not an expert. I've
No.
only ever been to 5 or 6 live jazz gigs, but I have seen Wynton Marsalis
Yeah.
and Wayne Shorter, who,
Mm,
let's face it, are pretty important jazz guys. So I'm
absolutely.
not an expert, but I do know something. And the great thing about Kamasi Washington Live is if on record, and his latest album is Fearless Movement,
Mm,
and his breakthrough album was The Epic,
mm,
2015, and I
mm,
bought Heaven and Earth in 2018. And if those albums pay homage to Coltrane and Miles Davis and Pharoah Sanders and Sun Ra,
mm,
there's always been a modern element to Kamasi. He's not a nostalgia act. So he was on Kendrick Lamar's 2015 album To Pimp a Butterfly. And on
mm,
his new album, he's got Andre 3000 from Outkast, Thundercat, the great George Clinton.
mm.
So I'm not don't want to portray him too much as someone linked to the past, but because he's a black American jazz musician, he's got this enormous heritage of great black jazz musicians
Sure.
for the last
Sure.
80 to 100 years. So he
Mm,
naturally is influenced by all that. Whereas the British acts that I really like the Comet's Coming, they don't feel honor bound to live up to those
no.
legends because they're not linked to it. They're from a more multicultural background. They're more into like reggae and dub reggae
Mm,
and dance music and it's different influences. But Kamasi live, he's got a live DJ scratching. He's got his dad on another type of saxophone. He's got the live band with a singer, and they're all cool as hell.
yeah.
And they all mix it up, and the musical styles, go across a huge range of musical styles,
Mm.
and they're just great to watch. They're just really entertaining, and so it was fantastic.
If someone is recommend, if you're going to recommend introducing someone to Kamasi, I don't mean as in shaking hands, but out of the albums that you have by Kamasi, would you recommend one in particular to start with him?
Well, well, his latest album, Fearless Movement,
Mm.
is only 86 minutes long. Only.
Just
That's
the
because his
86
previous
minutes long.
albums, yeah, he's usually a 120-minute man. So
Yeah.
I would recommend you get Fearless Movement, not just because it's the shortest album, but because it's the album where he's sort of like most in touch with the modern world
Mm.
and it's most focused. All the tracks are very focused and it's a bit looser, a bit funkier. It still covers lots of musical ground and it's still got elements of the 60s jazz greats in it, but it's altogether less grandiose, more human, less show offy. He's not showing off technically for the sake of it at any point. It feels more natural, less an act of ambition because
Mm.
previously on his earlier albums he was hugely ambitious and he's clearly trying to achieve something. But Fearless Movement feels more organic, and I'd recommend people buy that.
It's a strong statement if you call an album fearless statement. Fearless, what is it? Fearless what?
Fearless Movement,
Fearless movement.
Fearless Movement.
So here's someone who's absolutely confident that actually, that's exactly what jazz does. It should be fearless, and it's kind of saying, "I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing. This is fearless movement."
Well, yeah, he's standing there dressed like Sun Ra, and he's sort of like
Mm,
African tribal leader, long cloak, looking magnificent. He's not a you know he comes across as a very nice guy and very thoughtful, but
mm,
he's not a sort of like shy, earnest, intense. It's all very good, strong, laid back vibes. I mean, he's,
mm,
he's from LA and he grew up in LA.
mm.
He's not New York. He's definitely West Coast.
In when I've seen Courtney Pine, for example, it isn't just about Courtney Pine, it's always about the other musicians that are working with him. And that seems to be another great tradition within jazz that yes, there's the lead name or whatever, but they love working with a band and they love seeing how others within the band, how they play and what they bring to it as well. So that's part of the magic of a jazz gig is that actually it isn't just a star man who's out front. Other players have significant roles to play within that.
Oh yeah, almost every single member of the band, I think there was nine of them on stage, maybe eight. They all got a solo each. So yeah, and part of me was quite cynical, and I thought, well, the reason they've all got a solo each is so that Kamasi doesn't have to blow the sax the whole time because that's hard work. Let's face
Of
it,
course.
and he's touring, so he can't afford to like burn
Mm.
himself out. But it's also because there's no point in all these guys being great musicians if they don't get the chance to show off. So I think the difference between rock and roll in jazz is you're right in your original statement early on that the instrumentational skills are so much stronger in jazz that by nature they're going to have solos. Whereas in rock and roll, I mean, can you imagine if Blur gave like each member of the band a solo? I mean, what would be the point?
I'll give one exception. Ian Dury and the Blockheads,
Yeah, you're
magnificent
right.
musicians,
Good band.
which lent towards jazz playing, of course. Anyway, I mean, not
That's
just because they
true.
had
That's very
literally
true.
had
Yeah.
Chaz Jankel, even the name it might as well have been Jazz Chankel. I mean,
Yes, indeed. There's only one rock band that I've ever seen give each member of the band a long solo. And I
mm,
wasn't around to see Led Zeppelin in the 70s. I
no,
was too young to go to Led Zeppelin gigs, and I believe they did that sort of thing. I saw Kiss on their only tour without makeup at the Edinburgh Playhouse in about, was it 1983 or 85?
mm.
And they gave each member of the band a solo, including the drummer.
So we could
And
all work
and
out who they were
well, I don't know, but it was
without
it
the
was
face paint.
unbelievably tedious.
Yeah.
And there was a guy by I was it was all full of like people who like they were into heavy metal with
Mm,
long hair and dark leather jackets and jeans,
mm,
obviously except for me.
yeah.
And I heard a guy behind me during the bass guitar solo turn to his mate and say, "This is even worse than Judas Priest. I'm off." And then he left the gig.
I was at Nebworth for Led Zeppelin, so I can well recall Jimmy Page and 20 minutes of playing a
Oh,
guitar like a
good grief!
violin. I do remember
Yeah,
that. I can remember John Bonham seemingly doing his drum solo till the world turned tomorrow. So yes, I do recall such days.
whereas when you see Kamasi Washington and his band, you're quite happy when they do solos. That's the difference.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Well, both thumbs up for both Project House as a venue and in particular to Kamasi Washington. And I wouldn't be surprised, Graham, in future years if the tradition of the Harrogate Festival having artists of the jazz persuasion as one of the tranches of the festival, you could imagine maybe Kamasi Washington coming to play at the Harrogate Festival in a future year. That'd be good if that could happen.
That'd be fantastic. It's not impossible because it's a thousand capacity project house.
Mm.
So
Mm.
Harrogate has got a venue big enough to hold that
Royal
number of
Hall,
people.
Royal Hall
So
would happily take it. Yeah, yeah.
well, only standing up at the Royal
And
Hall.
Conference Centre. We didn't have to
Yeah,
stand up.
convention center. You could
Mm.
do the convention center sitting down for a thousand.
Yes.
So you could hold it at Harrogate Convention Center for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, Graham, every so often we dip into Bradford 2025 UK City of Culture. Later in the year, we'll definitely be doing a piece on the revival of the Railway Children, which has its origins, of course, here in York and is being revived on a station where the filming took place of the original film. And so that's one of the things we'll be looking at. But in the meantime, interestingly here, Graham, that City of Culture, one of the things that's always important is either revival of venues or new venues happening. Now, in this case, an Art Deco venue is to reopen in August with the new Yorkshire Symphony Orchestra launch. Which is the Art Deco venue, and how do we know about this?
Cinema, it was the Odeon.
It was
So
the
it started
Odeon.
off as a Gaumont, and it had
Yes,
bands like Buddy Holly, Chuck
it,
Berry, Little
it
Richard,
did.
Rolling
Yeah.
Stones, the Beatles.
Mm.
Then it became the Odeon, and it ended up as a top ranked bingo club,
Yes, it did.
which is like this sad trajectory of British venues in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And then it closed in 2000, and it's taken a hell lot of work and money to get to the point where it's going to reopen. And I
Yeah,
haven't been inside yet, but I
yeah,
have seen the photographs, and it looks absolutely stunning.
yeah,
It looks absolutely brilliant. They've kept the Art Deco look, and they haven't done any. From what you can see from the photographs, they haven't tinkered to make it more modern for the sake of making it look more modern. They've kept its grandness. So it looks like it'll be fantastic. And that's reopening on August the 1st for Yorkshire Day with the first concert of Yorkshire Calling by the new Yorkshire Symphony Orchestra, or newish Yorkshire Symphony Orchestra.
and that is
And
exciting news on two fronts because
guess who's conducting?
I think it'll be I think it'll be the guy that conducted the Ian McMillan, the last one that we saw of Ian McMillan's.
Well, it's Ben Craig.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we've both interviewed him. He's a really nice guy, as well as
absolutely.
being a great conductor.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're going to be playing, and it's going to be with poems written narrated by Ian McMillan
So
about
McMillan's
the
back
North.
involved again. That's great news, because we went to see
Mhm.
his Yorkshirefied opera, um, and with, as you say, Ben playing, with that. So, and I'm just pleased to hear that finally there is actually a date now for the venue to open, because I've sort of stuck my nose against the window frame to have a look in, and you couldn't see that far in at that point. So it's one of those ones you keep thinking, "Gosh, when's this going to happen?" But I'm so glad to hear that now finally is a date for that. And actually, what a great date to choose, Yorkshire Day, August the 1st. So that will be
Yeah, well,
exciting.
apart from Yorkshire Symphony Orchestra in Bradford in Yorkshire performing a Northern score
Mm,
written by Ben Craig with poetry by Ian McMillan. I mean,
mm.
it's like Yorkshire distilled into one location in one place. Like every Yorkshire spirit you could have inside one little bottle.
Absolutely, which I think should be part of any celebration of Bradford culture and Yorkshire culture. That's exactly. I interestingly, on just a slight tangent here, Kiki D, probably the best known singer from Bradford. I think it's fair to say. When I interviewed Kiki about a show that she was doing earlier this year, as yet she was yet to hear whether she's going to be taking part in the City of Culture, which I would have thought,
Hmm.
that seems to me a significant, famous place in the pop history as the first female British singer to sign with Motown's Tamla label
Hmm.
and record songs with them. And of course, number one duet with Elton John and all that. I would hope that at some point something will get confirmed for her to take part in the festival. I know she's keen to do so from when I was chatting with her. And I think she'd sort of looked into the possibility of it initially when she came up to do a concert at the back end of the year, but hasn't yet has heard any definite involvement. So watch this space for
Yeah,
that. But
well, I'm hoping that the opening of the new venue, which
mm,
by the way will have a ballroom and a restaurant as well, and it will have lots of things apart from music. It'll have comedy,
yeah,
lots of different
yeah,
types of live entertainment. I'm hoping to open that venue in August will actually spark Bradford's role in the UK state of culture
yes,
for the rest of the year. It'll actually have a better
yeah,
second half because,
yeah,
for someone in Harrogate, which isn't that far from Bradford, I haven't felt any ripples coming from the state of culture from
no,
Bradford arriving in Harrogate. It seems to be an event which
yeah.
so far is
Mm.
almost playing to itself and no one else.
Which would seem to me to not be the point of culture. The whole point
Yeah.
is to reach out and introduce people to a place that may not have been there before, as well as playing, of course, to the community and boosting that community, taking part in it. But it should, and certainly was the case with Hull, certainly was the case with Coventry, had obviously had the problems of, well, of course, COVID. The first three letters of Coventry tied in with the problems that COVID caused for Coventry as a city of culture. But certainly in Hull, one saw the benefit of it at the time. And I think this is something that hopefully will just grow through the year. We know that the National Media Museum's big involvement in it will be growing once the sound and vision projects are up and in place. And I think they'll be very impactful as part of the City of Culture as well. So we'll keep an eye on that too.
By the way, Charles, the new
Yeah,
venue is called Bradford Live,
Bradford
which
Live.
there seems
Yeah.
to be a real trend now for venues to be called something slightly strange as a name. So Bradford Live sounds like a music guide online, but
Yes.
it's actually the name of the venue.
I suppose I wanted to get a sense of it. Yes, it's got history. Yes, it's got from the past there, but I suppose live suggests well, it's newly alive again. And actually, what's it about? Well, it's about live entertainment and live activity. So you can see some merit in it, even if the words like Odeon and Gaumont are so much more evocative as names than the word live. But I quite
Probably
like that.
good for
Isn't
search engine.
live culture yogurt? Isn't that what yogurt is? Live
Yeah,
culture.
you're right, it is, yeah. But it's probably good for search engines online.
That's true. That would be another reason for it.
There was
Graham,
one significant thing in
yeah,
Bradford at the week on Friday.
yes,
Previewing Saturday's record store day,
yeah.
BBC Six Music had Hugh Stevens' show live from the Record Cafe in Bradford, and
Where is the Record Cafe in Bradford? Where is
I
that?
haven't been, I
No, I
haven't been,
wasn't
so I
even
can't
aware that
comment.
it had a record cafe. Mm,
Yeah, but Whiskers from that great Leeds band of the mid noughties, Forward Russia, who had
yes.
a few proper hits before forming. He let the band split up, and he formed Honor Before Glory, who played for
Mm.
the Fringe Crawl Day that organised
Oh, yeah,
Harrogate
yeah.
about
Yeah, yeah,
2011.
yeah.
He was on the show as well, bigging up the Yorkshire live music scene. And Whiskers is now involved with organisational projects funded to encourage the infrastructure of independent live music in Leeds, Bradford, and Yorkshire. So Whiskers has
Yeah,
gone from being a musician to being a sort of general ambassador. He's done this sort of Seb Coe
yeah,
thing from going from being a runner to being an administrator.
yeah. So, in what way did it boost Bradford, though, this Record Day Day? Just because it
Well,
got publicised?
at least it was one event that the whole nation who cares about music, who
Yeah.
listens to BBC Six Music, would hear about Bradford and
Did
know
it
that
did it
Bradford
did it
was a city of
state that not
culture.
only was it Record Store Day, but actually it was for the city? Was it for City of Culture? Presumably it was.
No, no, I think it was just because it's Record Store Day. But I mean, I think that the BBC should have had one of their annual music festivals in Bradford this year, but I don't know why they haven't, but they haven't
They had
so
it
far.
in was it Manchester or Liverpool?
The two major events had this year so far have been Manchester, Liverpool, BBC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing is last year, Preston last year did it at a major Radio 2 event. It couldn't be
That's
difficult
true.
to give one to Bradford, surely. If you give something to Preston, you
Well,
can certainly give
maybe
something to
with
Bradford.
Bradford Live opening on August, something will happen the second half of the year.
Yeah. I'd like to think that, the BBC will tap into City of Culture.
Mm-mm.
Every year it taps into it's a very different scenario, but every year it records concerts from the York Early Music Festival for broadcast, and that's can't be difficult surely to come up and do an event at the BBC. So come on, BBC, let's see what you can do, because I think it would. I
Mm.
think that's an easy way to stretch a festival beyond the boundaries of being there, so that everyone can tap into it. Can't be difficult to
I
do.
agree
That
entirely.
seems entirely logical. Now, Graham, I went to two contrasting live events. One of which was Al
Didn't you go
Murray.
and see a comedian at one event and a journalist at another event?
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. In fact, it's two ways of putting it, and you would be correct on both accounts. Al Murray, comedian, and doing his show Gov Island, which was at the York Barbican. And shortly afterwards, I went to see John Simpson at the Grand Opera House. And his show was called Leaders and Lunatics. And in many ways, you might not think, outwardly there's a kind of connection between the two, but and maybe it's tangential, but I'm looking at politics, and they do both,
Yeah,
obviously.
isn't Al Murray a bit of a proto Nigel Farage before Nigel Farage was Nigel
So I
Farage
think it's
in terms of
I
humor?
think I think it's always, let's put it this way. Al Murray, academic historian, Oxbridge brain, history podcaster, phenomenal knowledge of history, and astute judge of human character, plus caricature pub landlord. And there is a
Mm.
distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Yes, you go and watch Al Murray, but you are watching Al Murray, the pub landlord, the caricaturist.
Yeah.
And there are those who think actually this is what Al Murray is, this is what he believes in. The whole point is a send up of extreme views.
Yeah.
And there are
Yeah.
those who, and what's interesting is you get people clapping along with it, and I kind of feel a bit uncomfortable always because I don't,
Oh, don't tell me they
I
don't give it.
hope,
Yeah.
I do hope that people are clapping at him sending up the stupidity of these things,
Mm.
not actually
Mm.
agreeing with it. But on the other hand, maybe it's the two. So,
Isn't the problem with Al Murray? Isn't the problem with Al Murray that he's actually too good an actor? He's too convincing as the
I,
pub landlord.
well, you can never hurry a Murray with that, but
Mm.
I do think there is that case that the fact, I mean, actually his skills, his performance skills, the noises that he can make, and I'm not just talking noises, but he can make noises of a fax machine, which is a pretty odd noise to be able to make, but he can. He'll make the noise. He'll make exaggerated noises of when you were taking a
While under
photograph
pointless talents.
sending an image through on your phone, etc. So, and plus he can do any number of accents under the sun. He is a hugely bright and clever man who judges how to play with an audience, and he really does play with an audience. I mean,
Mm.
so it's gone to the extent that I suddenly was aware of people wearing, well, he called them ponchos, and who am I to argue with Al Murray? So you could choose to sit in the front row and be given a poncho, and actually then to the side, to the right, there was a row of people with ponchos, and what Al would come and do, and they would happily take part in this, was to have beer thrown all over them. Now, so
Hold on there, Charles. That is weird as hell.
and I see, I'm glad you said, why would you want to go to a show just to have beer thrown all over you?
You could stay at home and do that, Charles.
Well, you could. You could just have a night out with Graham Chalmers in the 1990s. But whatever. But I think it's fascinating that people are so in on how he is with his audiences and how he abuses them that they're happy now to even have beer thrown over them. So the first half of the show with Al was largely built around the exchange of information between people as usual. He gets the name, he asks them what jobs they do, he asks them about relations, etc., etc., and he basically works ways to build up a series of insults, including, so there was a chubby chap, shall we say, who is just, he
Mm.
never, I don't think we ever established what his name was. He just started calling him Forklift.
Was it Roy Brown?
It was not Roy Chubby Brown, who is coming to York. But so he just starts calling him Forklift. And what he keeps doing starts giving Forklift packets of crisps. And he gives him more packets of crisps. And the guy
Does he eat the crisps?
he was into crisps, clearly, because he's chunky
But
now.
does he eat them? Is the guy opening the crisp
I did
packets and
think by
eating
the
them?
end he might have been just storing the third one to have later. But but the way that Al Murray judges it, when I say get away with it, do I call it, is he intimidating? Well, I think people seem to genuinely enjoy having this, being insulted in this way. But I do
This
find.
sounds like Charles. This
Hmm?
sounds like he's recreating life at a public school.
I don't want to go there, Graham. You're bringing up difficult memories of my days, and we're not revisiting those. Otherwise, psychologically,
Okay.
I will need a session. But
Uh-huh. Should have gone to comprehensive.
therefore, I may. So, have I seen Al too often? Well, maybe on the first half of the show, but then, thankfully, while he still will acknowledge the various people that he's worked material through in the first half, he gets on to talking about the topics that you want him to talk about, which is Trump, obviously, which is Brexit, which is the state of Britain, which is
Mm.
the state of where the hell are we going, etc. And he is very clever at doing that still within this pub landlord, seemingly putting the right wing into being right all the time. But at the
So
same
is he
time,
not moved? You got a Labour government now. Is he not moved towards the left a little bit?
well, I mean, he will address. He did address the subject of Starmer and the Labour Party. Absolutely, he did. But it will still be, I think, from the point of view of the perspective of being the hale and hearty with a pint in his hand, listen to me moaning off about everything. But he was at the same time having a go at extreme views. He was sending up Trump hugely, which you might say is an easy target. The orange man, or the tangerine Satsuma man, or whatever he called him at
Yeah.
various stages. But he's also very clever at sending up the stereotypes. Like there was a young person there, and he was looking at how what irritates him about young people is how that this thing of, I suppose, the snowflake culture. But he's very clever at looking at that. But then he turns it on its head. So this is where his intelligence comes through. So
Mm.
he will play to pub landlord stereotypes, but then he will make clever points within that. So it's
Yeah.
actually quite a complex form of entertainment because he's a hugely bright guy. So
Yeah.
you have to
So
work hard.
just the audience realize that being, for want of a better phrase, a right wing nugget isn't the ideal thing to be the whole time, or do they end up thinking like Al's one of us?
I think I still think there are those who will be nodding their head in agreement, but there will be others who are, do actually work out what's at play here. That
Mm.
it is a satire above all else. The pub landlord is a satire, and that Al Murray is much more than just being the pub landlord. It's more levels
I
than
think the
that.
problem is, Charles, if he didn't look and act like a pub landlord with
Mm,
his bald head,
mm,
and although he's very well educated, he doesn't look. I mean, this will sound terrible. He does not look at a glance like a well-educated man. If he did look like your stereotypical lily-livered,
yes.
well-brought up, middle-class comedian doing the same material, the audience realized that this guy clearly isn't one of us. He's just taking the Mickey.
What
But
distinguishes him from?
because he looks the part,
Yeah.
that's why they believe
I
it.
mean, it is unnerving. It is unnerving when watching it. I just wonder how, if you were to compare him to a Jonathan Pye, for example.
Just think that he's in dangerous territory because he really do enough to make the audience aware that it is satire. I know that you're not honor bound to tell the audience the point of the
No,
joke. In fact, comedians usually don't tell you the point of the joke. They leave up to the audience to work
exactly.
out the point of the joke. But I
Mm.
think he's taken it so he takes it too far because he's pretense is too good.
It would, I think, be interesting to see, um, brave as it might be, to just be Al Murray now rather than the pub landlord character. What could he do with
Yeah.
that?
I'd also like to see him be. I don't know if he's done this already, but he's such a good actor. I could see him in proper acting roles,
Yes.
either TV, film, or stage,
Yeah.
and he'd be great at it. And I'm quite surprised that he hasn't.
I mean,
Doesn't seem to have done that.
we've seen, for example, Lenny Henry do that. We've seen
Mm.
Hugh Dennis do that. We've, of course, seen, um, I'm terrible at remembering names now. Plays jazz piano now. Rode in the boat race. Stephen Fry's chum, Hugh Laurie. There we go. Bang.
Oh
How
yeah,
long did that take?
Oh, good grief!
He's that talented.
Yeah.
So he's a
Mm.
polymath. That's an interesting point. If he were to do that,
Mhm. Well,
yeah.
yeah, it's a bit odd because he's not your typical stand-up comedian,
No.
and even some of them become proper
Oh,
actors.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
so, so the fact he's never become a proper actor is quite a surprise.
Mm. So from that, which is all energy, loud, brash, to a much more reflective evening with John Simpson,
Another
and
comedian.
playing to a full house. And if there are those who maybe feel the BBC ain't what it used to be. Well, I say go and watch a man like John Simpson in action, and you see someone who's had almost 60 years at the BBC, is still working for the BBC at the age of 80, still does a weekly program on BBC World Service, and is as astute as he ever was. And it was a show that gave you the opportunity in the second half to ask questions. But before that, what he was looking at is who might be considered a leader, or what made a leader, and who might be within that considered a lunatic. And so some would say, just let's use an example. Saddam Hussein, lunatic?
Uh, I don't know. Define lunacy. I mean,
There you are, you see. That's where it's interesting because one of the things that came across was how he was open about how intelligent, for example, Putin is, how intelligent, for example, Mugabe is, fiercely bright. And this
hmm,
was so is a lunatic something different? So, for example, he had wonderful footage of meeting Colonel Gaddafi, and I think it was Gaddafi, and he was wearing a Stetson, and he was wearing it sideways, and he looked bonkers. And
yeah,
the interview that Simpson did with him, Simpson kind of knew the character that he was, and he basically wasn't, as he, he was pretty much nuts as a person, as opposed to being an out and out lunatic in a different way, who didn't have conscience of or empathy, but had leadership qualities. And
yeah. But at that point, Gaddafi, when he was talking to John Simpson, if
mm,
Gaddafi had been a poet or a musician, you would
mm,
have said he was eccentric. You wouldn't
yeah,
have said he's a lunatic. You would have said
yeah,
he was eccentric.
yeah, exactly. And certainly in the case of Gaddafi, you would say that. But of course, more troubling would be characters like Saddam Hussein. John Simpson was there at when his life was brought to an end. He was there reporting live,
Mm.
of course, on that. It was interesting too to hear him talking about near death experiences. He told us 10 near death experiences he had had in his career.
Hen, Illuminator.
10. And he gave details of one, just gave an example of one where he was 14 paces from where an American bomb had been dropped, 1,000-pound bomb in weight had been dropped. And he was 14 paces from it. And in his arms was his translator who died in his arms in that moment.
Mm.
And you think, gosh, that is right at the cutting edge and dangerous edge of working. But he always went back, has continued to go back to the front.
Mm.
He talked of another incident where,
I'm
well,
not sure I would. Why does he go back?
because he wants to report on what goes on in the world. He's driven by that. He's driven by a need to tell the truth. And that was, I thought, the most revealing thing, that maybe pressures on the BBC to take a different approach to the news and know that, it's very clearly stated, BBC journalists do not offer opinions, are not allowed to give opinions. It's just, and that's not part of presenting on the radio. You do not give an opinion. I can when I go on and talk, but as a presenter, you can't. You cannot do that. Um, but he
There's
wants to
different ways of
search.
giving opinions opinion across that don't involve you actually giving your opinion. If you're
I think there
smart.
is a skill to doing that, by a politician or whatever. But his pursuit of the truth, revealing what's going, he walks in a pronounced way because he has shrapnel in his leg from. He struck me as exactly what I would wish a journalist to be.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.